We're here in the Indiana State House to talk about the Daniel Initiative, and here with me is State Senator John Crane from District 24. Senator Crane, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Glad to be with you.
So thank you for taking a few minutes to talk with me about the Daniel Initiative. And now you lead District 24, which is Hendricks and I believe Putnam
County,
counties.
that's right, so just west of Hendricks. So.
And you also have an interesting perspective because you're formerly a pastor.
That's right.
And heavily involved in your church. And then you also lead the Sagamore Leadership Initiative, which is an organization focused on next generation Christian leadership.
Yeah, that's right.
So I love that you've got all of these different things, all of these different perspectives, and that's why I wanted to speak to you about it. And so as we've launched the Daniel Initiative, I've certainly relied on your wisdom, and so I wanted to dive into some particulars with you on some of the big ideas behind the Daniel Initiative. And so the first one is, in a world where we're more distracted than ever before, we're more divided than ever before, why should the church, the gospel preaching church, be engaged in public life?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that the church has been wrestling with for a long time, right? How does my faith affect my life? Should Christians be involved in politics at all, or is there a separation of church and state? The state does what it does, and the church does what it does. There's a spectrum there because there's people that say we should completely separate, and there's other people that actually look to politics as the avenue for salvation of our nation, for example. And of course, we know that politics is important, but it isn't the salvation. Christ is the salvation. So it is a theological, practical conversation that's been going on for a long time. From my perspective, as somebody who believes fervently that the Christian worldview it represents all of reality, isn't just a slice of reality, then that means that the Bible and God and His Word have something to say about all of life, in particular politics, because politics also impacts every aspect of our life, whether we fully realize it or not. So if we are not fully engaged in this arena, then we are, in my opinion, losing out on the opportunity to be able to offer a very needed, and I would argue a singular voice on providing the ultimate solutions to a lot of these problems that we're wrestling with.
For many people, they see, especially now, it seems like there's a greater tension than ever before in between, well, should we just not say anything at all? Or if we do get engaged, how should we do that? And so as a former pastor, now as a state senator, I'm sure you feel some of these. Would you dive into those tensions for the average pastor that's trying to figure out, well, should I engage, should I not engage? What are some of those tensions, and then some ways that you've thought about navigating those tensions now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can trace those tensions back to the speaking truth in love tension that Paul talks about, right? Yeah. Because we have to have truth, but truth without love is very harsh. Love without truth is very weak. And so they provide a necessary, healthy counterbalance for each other. A lot of times we get passionate, and a lot of non-Christians get passionate about their issues, and they come charging down here, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. Well, Christians tend to do the same thing sometimes. You just need to, and they've got their very simple solution to what is often a very complex problem. And so if we're going to be effective, number one, we do have to engage. We absolutely have to engage. To not engage, as I mentioned a minute ago, is to abdicate the opportunity that we have in the public square to provide a voice of truth and love for people that need to hear it. But secondly, when we engage, we have to be what I call thoughtful in how we engage. And that includes two things. Number one, how we think. We need to be critically engaged. We need to engage our critical mind. But secondly, our manner. That we are kind, that we are practicing the fruits of the Spirit, that we are following the basic golden rule of treating people the way we want to be treated. You will not listen to me if I don't come in and treat you with respect. And one of the greatest things that you can do, and most effective things, I think, is also one of the simplest. And that is to initially build a relationship with your elected officials at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, and figure out, how can I serve you? How can I pray for you? write them notes of encouragement, because this role tends to be a lonely job.
Sure.
And there's a lot of criticism from a lot of sides. So to be the one that kind of sends a note of encouragement is like this light shining through this darkness, right?
Yeah.
And you go, wow, okay, that really got my attention.
Well, and certainly building relationships is a big focus of the Daniel Initiative.
Yeah.
As we explained it, it's a gospel-centered effort to build relationships with elected officials and then impact public life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned it, and I talked about that a little bit, but perhaps maybe even just a personal story about the importance of building that relationship prior to ever talking to your legislator about policy, and how that's actually going to be a point of persuasion. It's going to be much more effective.
Oh, absolutely. I'll just be real candid. One of the things that's kind of tough in this role is to figure out who your real friends really are. Because a lot of people want to talk to you. A lot of people want your attention. They want your time. They want to rub shoulders with you. And sometimes, and if you're not careful, you can get jaded, is the only reason you're talking to me because you want something, right? And it is very real. It is very real. We don't often talk about it, but it is a very real thing. Well, what does that provide? That provides the opportunity for people of faith and for leaders of faith to come along and initially say, you know what, I don't want anything.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to be here to help you. And at first, kind of like, wait,
Yeah,
what's
wait.
up? I don't understand this.
Where's the bait and switch?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you say, there is none. I just want to serve you. And if you do that, and you genuinely are praying for them and stepping in and trying to provide support, then you're building that relationship, and then there comes the opportunity to develop authenticity to then be able to speak some truth at points where it's needed, right? But we tend to focus on the truth first and come charging in, and haven't done a lot of the long-term strategy of genuinely building a relationship for its own sake, not to try to manipulate you in the long run.
And that so emphasizes part of the Daniel Initiative, which is this isn't about just winning. It's not about winning elections.
That's right.
It's about building relationships for the sake of relationships, because just like pastors are quite savvy about these things after a little bit, so statesmen, stateswomen are also, I'm sure you can probably smell that a mile away.
Yeah.
Butter you up so you give them some.
That's right.
And then the other concept I want to talk about is we often see, and whether you're on the faith perspective of this or perhaps on the other side of the aisle, we often see the state and the church at war.
Yeah.
It's state versus church.
Yes.
But I'm thinking of a particular bill that you authored this session. I think there's an opportunity moving forward, though there will always be tension, for the church and the state actually to be partners, to work together towards solving some of these issues that we all face, like the drug crisis, the breakdown of the nuclear family, which you talk about so often, the foster care crisis, homelessness, and we can work together towards those. And I thought that Senate Bill 365, the care portal, I think is the name of it, is such a great example of that. So would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your larger point about the way we can work together, I think that we need to work together. As I share with people all the time, if we are not helping people understand and apply a robust Christian worldview, then everybody loses. Everybody, not just Christians, but every human being on the planet. Because the Christian worldview lends itself to the very things that promote health and well-being, a civil society, and so forth. So if then the church has stepped out of the public square, it's not as if the people and the problems have gone with it. The people and the problems are still there. And so then you have other people looking and going, man, we need to solve this orphan crisis or this drug problem or whatever it might be, educational issues.
Yeah.
If the church isn't there, then somebody else is going to step in, and it typically is the government. Mm-hmm. And so then you end up having the government creating programs for which it wasn't originally designed to be working. And so the thing that I love and try to promote is public-private partnerships. Well, there's a lot of walls that have to be broken down to recognize that, number one, the government has a God-ordained specific role to play. Mm-hmm. And the flip side of that is the church, the faith community, the private sector has tremendous value for community good, the common good, so that if we can work together, we can actually partner in solving these issues. The care portal is just a microcosm of that. You've described it well as the Uber app for helping people, specifically children, who are potentially going to be put into the foster care system, to prevent them from doing that by solving some of the problems that they need to have solved. Well, the basic concept is an online portal would be kind of like an online, like a bulletin board, where caseworkers from DCS can identify, look, if we need a crib for this family, then that's going to prevent this child from having to be put into the system, or maybe they need a new furnace or something like that. And they put that request out there, and churches, nonprofits, business entities, or other organizations can look and say, hey, we can get that, we can take care of that, and working together, which keeps the child out of the foster care system, and actually, another bonus, it saves money to the state.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic concept.
It makes so much sense. And I was reading one story about a church providing free beds to a single mom. And the problem in these cases, they're called child in need of services cases. DCS is obligated to remove them if the parent can't provide a safe home.
That's right.
And so the church is coming along saying, hey, we're going to give you these resources. And I remember a judge saying one time, and I have to look up the exact stats, but basically the moment a kid is removed from their home, the chances of them ending up in, say, an early pregnancy, in jail, committing crimes, just goes up. And that's not to denigrate any child that's been in foster care. It's just to say that it's such a damaging and traumatic situation.
Absolutely. And you also have churches that are awake to the problems and going, somebody needs to do something. What do we do? Who do we talk to? Where do we go? I don't even know where to start. So the beauty of this concept of the care portal, and my good friend and colleague, Senator Andy Zay, has kind of been in the driver's seat of this with some other key leaders here, is to say, look, here's a way that's very simple, but to your point, extremely effective in being able to help some of these most vulnerable kids.
So that's a great example, I think, as we move forward, if every church was looking at ways that we can get involved, how that might change the perspective in the public square.
Yeah.
But there still will be times when we all just can't see eye to eye.
Sure.
And you've touched on it already, this concept of speaking the truth in love, that even perhaps when we disagree, the manner in which we disagree is so important to our gospel witness or public witness. So as we kind of wrap up this interview, would you speak to that, and maybe even how you navigate that in the heated place, which is the Senate chamber?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it goes back to the relational piece, right? If you and I have a genuine friendship, then when we get up on the floor and have to debate, it probably won't be as strident as it might be if we have some distance in that relationship. But to that point of, I'm not necessarily going to shy away from speaking some hard truths that need to be spoken. But I can do so in a way, hopefully, that is in a spirit of love. It is in a spirit of thoughtfulness. I can ask some key questions that need to be addressed to identify some underlying assumptions that maybe my opponent is making that need to be drawn to the surface. And hopefully give some people to think about, some things to think about, so that they can go, you know what, actually that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it that way. And there are ways to do that. It's just that we haven't necessarily put ourselves in positions to do that. The other piece to that, which I think is very detrimental, is I think social media has not lent itself to fostering thoughtful dialogue and debate. And so we've gotten into this thing now where if you disagree with me or I disagree with you, then one of us is being accused of hate speech when it's just reasonable differences on an issue. And I don't think that that's going to help any of us along the way. So then you have good people that shy away, or you see somebody that speaks some truth, even if it's done in the right way, and they get shot full of arrows, and then everybody else is watching them going, ooh, good luck, buddy, sorry about that. Keep your heads down, it's pretty rough out there,
So I was thinking about this recently, that of course social media is meant for these really quick reactions to it. And so I was just looking at all the reactions, like, haha, heart, I've never seen an emoji of the thinker. Let me think about it. That's not.
That'd be good. I'd love to see that. Absolutely.
And I think this is important to understand how persuasion would happen. If you're trying to to talk to somebody on the other side and prevail on your points and say, here is truth, here's what's right. That's never going to happen in the context of you screaming.
Absolutely. That's right.
So that's another just really important piece of speaking the truth in love. So you have this statement, which I think is amazing. And so would you share the statement about the bobblehead?
Oh, yeah.
If anybody might see that. I think it caps off the Daniel initiative so well, because this is really, it's an expression of discipleship, of following the way of Jesus in public life.
That's right.
And so would you share that with me?
Well, let me start by saying that in today's generation, there's a lot more work that the church needs to do to help their people understand a biblical worldview and its implications for their personal life, their family life, and society at large. The other side of that pendulum then is, if we're doing a lot of Sunday school classes and equipping groups and small groups and all that stuff, and we're giving people a lot of teaching, but we aren't necessarily helping them figure out the application, then you create what I call a biblical bobblehead, right? So they've got all this biblical knowledge, but it's not actually being applied in a meaningful way. They can quote chapter and verse, and they know all the different theological arguments for this or that, but when it comes to actual real-world application, they are ill-equipped or even reticent to actually step forward. Yeah. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier. By not stepping forward, everybody loses. Yeah. The people with whom you might have had the opportunity to interact don't get that interaction from you. They don't necessarily hear that truth that they need to hear. They don't necessarily feel that love that they need to feel as they're trying to make their way through what I call the cultural wilderness. And they're grabbing their own version of their own kind of compass, which is a broken compass. They've been told by the culture, this is the way to go. In fact, you can chart your own course, not realizing that the real compass, God's Word, is what's going to help them navigate through all of it. They're trying to figure it out. We have the answer. Yeah. That's the beauty of it, and not the answer in a I'm going to lord it over you kind of way. But it's like two people who are famished, looking for food. One of them finds food, but then isn't in a position to actually say to his friend, hey, I found the source of what we need for our sustenance long term. That is where the church's role is to point people to the ultimate hope that we're all looking for.
I love that. And so it becomes ultimately an act of love to say, we believe this is the truth.
Absolutely.
Therefore,
I love you enough to tell you the truth. That's right.
That's right. The same way you would do that with a friend, we're just saying we're also going to do that in the context of public life.
That's right. That's right.
So I love that statement, don't be a biblical bobblehead. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us to discuss the Daniel Initiative. And for any of those that are watching, hopefully you can catch the spirit, the heart of Senator Crane, as well as the Daniel Initiative. And so in a sense, kind of reimagining public life, we want to be gospel-centered, we want to speak the truth in love. And so if you want to know more about the Daniel Initiative, you can visit our website, which we'll scroll through in the comments or on a banner here on the video. And also we encourage you to follow us on Facebook and to get involved in this new way of thinking about the church's engagement in public life. Thanks so much for being on.
Absolutely. Great to be with you, Josh.